has been to our stuff before and has their own, interest and maybe more in death. So please feel free to be as weird and loud as you can be.
I don't think that will be a problem, Aaron. I really don't.
Well, Jennifer, do you want to kind of give a brief introduction of yourself, and then we'll go into detail of some of those cool things that we mentioned that you do?
Sure. Well, obviously, the first thing I want to say is obviously I'm from Ireland, and as the lady said, I am from Ireland. So if I say anything you don't understand, I take no offense with you asking me to repeat it in proper language or anything like that, because many of the funeral homes that I work with and work for, they have nicknames for me like bits and bobs, because apparently that's not an American phrase. So it's fine. So I will say that I take absolutely zero offense. But yes, I am known as the Glam Reaper, which I found hilarious. So it actually came from an Irish newspaper, did a huge spread. And my face was like this size. Oh my God, it was just hideous. I was like, oh, why am I all over the newspaper? But they called me the Glam Reaper, and it just sort of stuck. I loved it up until that point, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with these type of names. I was called the Dead Girl, or like the Dark Girl, or Funeral Girl, or just various different versions of that. Although I have to say, anytime I came over to the funeral industry conventions over here in America, I was just the Irish girl, so that was kind of nice. Yeah, that was kind of nice.
Irish,
Although I did constantly get, especially the guys, asking me to say, oh, my Lucky Charms, they're magically delicious. I was like, really, guys, really? Is that okay? All right. So I did do it sometimes. Yeah. So, but yeah, the gorgeous list that you ladies read out is, yes, I don't sound like I'm bored, that's for sure. Sometimes you forget how many things you do, but yes, I was started in the industry 10 years ago, and I actually was a wedding planner. Believe it or not, a little bit probably more suited to my personality, one would think. And unfortunately, two friends of mine passed away. One was 23 and one was 28. And I found myself sitting in their funeral, which back home in Ireland is a church. Doesn't matter whether you believe in the church or not, it's in a church, and we very much go through the old traditional way of doing things. And I personally was in my 20s. I was dealing with the loss of my friends. Both of them happened to be brothers of my best friends as well. So I was also dealing with that capacity of trying to be there for my friends. And then I was obviously an event planner, and I was kind of thinking, this isn't logistically what I would want. So how, if I wanted to do it my way, what way would I do it? So strangely enough, came home, did what we all do these days, which is hit Google and started looking things up. And in Ireland, you get a lot of UK and US information, and there was nothing out there for Ireland. And I thought to myself, well, if I was dying, and sitting in a hospital and wanted to plan my own funeral, which would be very much a thing I would do, where would I even start? And for me anyway, I thought the last thing I would want to do is go into a funeral home, because like a lot of people assume out there, they're full of Igors and horrible and dark and musty and just, men in grey suits trying to rob you of all your money. And so I thought, well, what's the option? What's the alternative? So that was how I ended up writing my first book. And on the back of that, I welcome new people. On the back of that, then, I launched my cremation jewelry line. And well, I say line, it is effectively the one line, but it is, we do for pets and we do for humans. Actually, I was fascinated. I was doing a convention one time, and somebody was holding it, one of the pieces, and they said, oh, I'm really interested in this, but can I do it for my dog? And I was like, yeah, I mean, ash is ash, sure. But to me, it was like, not, it made sense. Whereas to them, it was just a huge leap. So it's very interesting. And I'm sure you guys get this the whole time, that the way Joe Public looks at things in terms of when you know something. As I always say, it's easy to sort of until somebody knows something, they don't know it. And so it's our job as educators to educate people on what we do know. It's like sometimes I'm like, get inside my head for a day. You'll soon want to leave. But yeah, I'm kind of rabbiting on. So I don't know if you guys have any pointed questions. And apologies if I live near a helipad. So if you hear helicopters taking off, apologies about that. But.
Well, thank you. No, that was a really awesome introduction. There's a lot of jewels in there, and I feel like we could unpack with you for a long time. I think where I would like to start, if it's okay with you, is to talk about, what it was like when COVID first hit and you're having to tell families, we can't do this in person. You can't see your loved one. Here's what we can do. What did that look like for you?
So my role with funeral homes is I am a celebrant and I am an event planner. So typically I wasn't introduced or haven't introduced to families until they've been through the funeral director. And at that point, then it'll be referred on to me. But yeah, when COVID hit, God, I can't even begin. It was like all of us, it just hit you like a smack in the face. And it was actually very interesting for me because I was working with a family at the time, and I'm here in New York City, and I was working as literally day by day, they were introducing the rules, and it was getting stricter and stricter and stricter. And I was working with a family that, no joke, went from 150 people, a whole hotel, block booked, venue booked, caterers booked, everything, down to, okay, we can only have 50 people. Okay, here's what we can do. Okay, it's just immediate family. Okay, it's the family couldn't even get travel because they had to travel. So we literally went day by day, getting like in the funnel, getting smaller and smaller and smaller as COVID just took over the world. So that was really fascinating. And for me, it's just all about communicating with the family. And we ended up, I was a celebrant, but we also organized having the service done through Zoom, as we are all very familiar with these days. And here we are now. I love that it's become a verb, like Google, your Zoom.
Yeah.
Did you Zoom it today?
Good business here for Zoom.
Yeah, thank goodness, exactly. It's fascinating actually to see how that growth. But so yeah, it was incredible that just because it had to happen so fast for this huge event to evolve, as I said, funnel down to it just being televised. And it broke my heart for the family because it started so big and just ended up being us in the room. What's interesting about it though is, and what I have done is stayed in touch with each of my families that we were limited or we had any limitations at the start. So that family, they've actually organized a monument for their mother, and we're actually unveiling it next month. And I just got off a Zoom call with them where we're unveiling it. Now we are unveiling it also not in person, but we're recording that. And it's just about maintaining that relationship the entire way through. And to your point, I'm the best friend you never wanted to need. I literally hold their hand the entire way through. And interestingly, it becomes more, and it's probably because of the freedom I have in my business, is that I become that touch person, that person that they know they can rely on to get the job done. No
I would almost say you're a death doula as well, but you're a post-mortem death doula.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Birth doulas are qualified into labor and delivery, and then postpartum. It's totally appropriate.
100%. And you become that crutch that people sort of lean on, good or bad. And I actually had a bad experience recently where a woman actually made me cry, and not from an emotional point of view, from just her going at me, which was interesting, and the first in 10 years that's ever happened. But emotions are heightened right now and people are feeling those limitations. But what's interesting, about this story and it was so interesting because it was the start of COVID, and we're doing the unveiling of the monument now next month, and it's me working with a rabbi, and just making sure that the two sons, that they feel that they're present because of me, effectively. Now we're Zooming everything and we're getting a recording, but equally they want to very specifically do something in person in the fall as well. So it just goes to show, and listen, is it about money and, everything like that? Of course, it's great. I had that work at the start of COVID. I had this work in June, and I'll have work in fall. It's about building the relationship. Of course, do I need to put, food on the table and pay rent in New York City? Of course. So, depending on the business that you're in, honestly, I would about to say any business you're in, it's all about relationship. People buy from people. And so you could charge the earth, moon, and stars to people, but if you don't have that relationship, forget about it. So for me, it really is. It's just about taking the family through. Even today, I'm doing a service tomorrow, and even today, the family rang me and they said they couldn't get a hold of the funeral director and they were distraught. And I was like, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm sure there's a reason for it. Let me contact the funeral home for you. Let me contact the videographer for you. So to be honest, I stepped in and did effectively the funeral home's role. But why not? I mean, it's 2 phone calls for me. It's going to take no time at all. And all of a sudden, I'm her best friend that she never wanted to need. I'm the person who gets the job done and becomes that reliable person. So COVID definitely showed me, I mean, I always did that before, but it really showed me the importance of maintaining that relationship with people and checking in on them. Even a month down the road when you've just done a service and stuff. So, I mean, obviously everything went online, which love and hate, to be honest. I have to say, I'm a big in-person fan. It could be the Irish in me, but, as far as I'm concerned, having been away from home myself and had losses, it's so important to have that in-person event at some point. That will be my vibe on it for sure. So
absolutely. And so I love that you're doing that, delayed, that's something Lauren and I have talked a lot about throughout COVID, is the need for community grief and the need to process things that have happened that we couldn't process in real time. And does that look like, mass funerals? What does that look like? And one of our affiliates who owns the water cremation business here in Denver has planned 3 different dates throughout the summer. I think it's a June, July, and August, community funeral date. So anybody who died, this month can come June, this month can come, and they can have a community ceremony. And I think it's beautiful. And I think it's necessary. I mean, we all know that unprocessed grief is not good for us and expresses itself in any number of ways.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the country at large, every country at large really suffered so much in this last year, and I think every country needs to have some sort of a Memorial Day, some sort of something, because this last year, it's not, and actually I talk about this on my podcast, it's not it's about loss of the human life for sure, but it's that loss of connection, it's job loss, it's divorce. There's been people dealing with so much on their own. So people out there are lonely. They don't know who to turn to. People suffered miscarriages. They lost their income.
Suicide rate is largely up. We were talking about that two nights ago online.
It's mind-boggling, and it is. It's a worldwide grief. It's heartbreaking to watch. Actually, it really is. But
so ceremony doesn't. It doesn't dilute grief necessarily, but I think it gives it a place to be held and a way to be channeled. And it's an action-oriented kind of honoring thing that we can offer. And so I hesitate to say that, that anything helps our grief necessarily, but I do think that ceremony is one of the most powerful things that we can do to move through it in a healthy way.
And do you know what's interesting? And I'll say 2 points to this. One was from personal experience, and then the way I describe a funeral, and even when I started 10 years doing what I do, and when I talk about doing what I do, I do a lot of different things, but primarily when I started the business 10 years ago in Ireland, it was as a funeral planner. That was what I kind of called myself, because I didn't know And to be honest, I'm still not really on board with the whole memorial versus funeral term. To me, it's just like, oh, for God's sake, like, let's
I
call
feel
a
the
spade a
same way
spade.
about that. Yeah.
Like, it's like the way, you know, certain people in this industry are like, we're not an industry, we're a community, or we're not a this, we're that. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake, if you're making money, you're an industry. Like, come on now. Anyway, we won't get into the politics of various different things, but so I started as a funeral planner because I thought, well, you know, does it really matter if it's in a chapel or a funeral home? If it's in any venue and it's led by somebody, I mean, surely that's enough. But my thing that I came up against was that people assumed that I wanted to be all, you know, a party, and I'm a party planner, but for, you know, and everything was happy, and you know, we were supposed to ignore the fact that somebody had died, and that everything was you know, celebration, etc., right? That's never really what it's been about for me. To me, a funeral is very, very important. It is the blueprint from which we start the grieving process, as far as I'm concerned. It is that one, and that's why I'm so into the in-person one, because it is, as you said, it's that one time where your loved ones gather around you for a one unified goal, which is to comfort, to mourn the loss of that person, and to celebrate their life, if that's what you're into, which actually, if you talk to 90% of people who are alive, they want you to celebrate them when they're dead. There's not one person I've met, I say 90%, but there's not one person I've ever met in my last 10 years who has said, no, I want everybody to be devastated and mourning me.
Well, I would like you to meet Lauren and me. We want people to cry and drink margaritas. There's got to be a lot going on, like stations.
No, here's the thing though. It's not about crying. It's what I'm saying is that most people want you to celebrate the time you had alive with them. There's not one person I've met who said, oh God, no, I want everybody to be absolutely mourning, devastated, not celebrating me at all, just mourning my, you know, that I'm gone and just being miserable. I'm like, no. But anyway, the reason why I absolutely personally know myself is because, and I think if anybody on this call owns a pet, right? I know might be a little bit of a contentious thing for some people, but when we lost our dog, and you know, even the term lost, I'm not a big fan of, because I didn't lose him. He died. She died. So when she died, I was completely lost. Like because I didn't have a funeral to arrange. I didn't, you know, it was this huge part of my life. Huge. She was with me through my teen years when I told her everything. You know, I could have told her absolutely anything and she just would have, you know, licked me and gone like, yep, all good with you, still love you, even if I told her the worst thing in the world. But she was gone, and my friends didn't know what to do. They were like, Jim, you know, are you okay? Like, can we ask that? Do we send flowers? I mean, I don't know. What do we do? Like, they did not know how to deal with me and the loss, and I didn't know what to do. I remember walking into my mum, and this is years and years ago. I remember walking into my mum's bedroom and saying, Mum, like, what do we do next? Like, what happens? And so I'm convinced that a funeral gives us that start off point, that, you know, it allows us to grieve.
We definitely do not discount animal and pet loss as anything minimal. Like it is so real. I've lost, you know, some animals are just animals, and some animals are your damn best friends. You know, they call them familiars for a reason. And I have grieved animals as much as I've grieved humans, and I've grieved humans in a very real way. So we never ever discount that. I'll share a little story because I think it's valuable here, since we're talking about animal loss and like not knowing what to do. You know, most people, even if their animal's being put down, they say goodbye, and they only have 2 minutes to do that, or, you know, 10 minutes if the vet's generous, and then that's that. They don't know that they can bring the body home if they want to. And last weekend, a good friend, her beautiful white husky just died out of the blue. This was running 1 minute and dead the next minute. And you know, she went to the vet, kind of was too late, but it was a desperate attempt, and she had passed. And so we got on the phone and I said, bring her home. I'll meet you at your house. And, you know, bring ice packs and bring the whole death doula kit and set up a space and bring flowers and bring candles. And And we laid there for hours and we petted her, pet her beautiful white fur, and we prayed over her, and we blessed her body, and we said all the things that needed to be said. And then the next day, which was actually Mother's Day, we went up to the mountains and dug a hole in the ground and buried her ourselves. And that is healing. It doesn't take her pain away. She's still grieving. Absolutely. Absolutely she's still grieving. But the point isn't really to stop grieving. It's to create a relationship with our grief.
Exactly. And to be honest, that is actually I had that conversation today with somebody. That's one of the things I get actually when people are nervous to have a funeral or memorial in a venue that's not a chapel or a funeral home or a church, that they kind of think, well, Jen, I don't want this to be a party. That's not what this is about. And it's one of the things I have to reassure nearly every family, just because they're doing that thing that's slightly different. It's just different to the status quo. I'm like, it's not. It's all about creating the right tone. And that is genuinely thank God, is what my families have said about me. They're like, Jen, I thought I could just hire any event planner to do this. I thought I could do this myself. I thought X, Y, and Z. I'm like, you just got the tone absolutely right. And that's exactly it. It's just about, it's not about taking away that grieving process, because you can't.
It's representing that person. I mean, you said that earlier. You said you're the person who's like bringing them there. And that is the essence of it. And as a doula, I'm really fortunate because a lot of times I get to work with the client before they've died too, and even work on their funeral with them.
Yeah.
And, present that later. And so I think that is a representation.
Yeah.
On that note, I want to ask really quick, for everybody here, what are good questions to ask families to kind of set that tone? Like, is there a basic starting point that you are at so you can kind of read where they're at?
So when I sit down with a family, I do have a form that I work from, a kind of a basic questionnaire. But I have to say, I do think, and I do actually train celebrants, to work under me as well. But one of the things I've actually said is that you do need a bit of an innate skill. You do need to be born with the skill of reading people. Yes, you can learn it. It takes a long time to learn it, because you can read a situation completely wrong. But one of the things I found very interesting, and I didn't realize it until COVID, was that I'm not actually a physical toucher, is that I do use physical touch. I personally, and this is very personal for me, I personally hate the words "I'm sorry for your loss" or "my sincere condolences." I just find them grating. Like somebody said it to me. Yeah, it just means nothing. They're meaningless words. They're what we're used to saying as a society. It's what we've been trained to say. Even when I hear funeral directors say them, I'm like, oh my God. But that's just me. It's just a personal. So I've actually realized with the onset of COVID that my sort of love language, or my way to express that I'm there for the families, is just to put my hand on their arm or on their shoulder, even just briefly. And it's interesting because I'm not really a hugger or a physical touchy person, but I didn't realize that until I couldn't do it suddenly. And so I did find between that and with the mask, with COVID, it was very hard for me to connect with my families. Initially, I had to kind of figure out new ways, express my eyes a bit more. But yeah, when I sit down with a family, to me, it's just reading the room. Usually I'm sitting down with 2 or 3 people. Sometimes it's one person, but it's giving them, the 2 things I would say is giving them the space for them to talk, because a lot of times they don't get that. And also just meeting them where they're at. So I've witnessed in variety of funeral homes that I work in that a lot of people will say, oh, I'm going to call you at such and such time, or I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And one of the things that I'm nearly kind of trying to train funeral directors I work with to meet families more where they're at is I'll generally say, well, how would you like me to contact you? Do you prefer email? Do you want me to text you? Do you want me to call you on your cell? Do you want me to call you on your landline? Smoke signal? Send a dove. How would you like me to talk to you? And you would not believe the amount, well, maybe you would believe the amount of people who come back and say, I'd rather you just text me or email me. And yet funeral directors are allergic to that form of, the ones that I work with anyway, are allergic to that. And it's, you know, they use fax of whatever. Like, I mean, there's a lot of the old school, but so it's meeting people where they're at, and listening to what actually they want. And if there is 2 or 3 people in the room, is watching the dynamic, because there will typically be the person in charge. There will be the person that thinks they're in charge, and then there will be a person sort of maybe signing the checks. You know, you do need to know who all these players are, for you to get the job done. The person who will collect all the information and get it to you when you need it, and the person who might want to speak at the service. But in terms of then, and that was kind of, mostly that's in general, but specifically more to when I'm doing celebrant, when I'm doing an actual memorial or an event, a lot of people do rely on my expertise. But again, you do need to give them the space to let them tell you what they would like. I even only told a client there the other day, because he was very indecisive and he didn't know what he was doing, and we have plenty of time. And I said, you know, have you taken some time out to just sit with your thoughts and think about what your wife would like, and maybe meditate on what, money aside, just check that for a second, like leave that aside and envision, what would you like when you wake up the morning after this service? What feeling do you want? What did it look like in your eyes? Because sometimes people can get so wound up in the details, in the, this is going to cost so much money, or, you know, people are going to think this, or I need to do this. They get so caught up in the needs and the wants and the finances and what people think, that it actually takes away from what they truly want in their heart. And so I try to drill into that part of it, because there's always ways for you to do it, and to do it sort of cheaper. Like, even, you know, when I was knew I was coming on this call, I work with a lot of high-end clients, but I work with people who can't really afford much either. And there are ways to do both aspects. Yeah, it's just about hustling, and it's just about sort of figuring out the way. There are so many free apps online right now that you can utilize, like e-invite platforms that you can send out. Even doing Zoom, you know, if you can't afford to have a load of people over for a reception, you can invite them all on on an Evite platform, do it through Zoom, and ask them to all have a glass of Prosecco or something, if that was what the deceased's favorite drink was. Or there are just so many different ways to incorporate and personalize a service. It's just about thinking about it creatively. And I just feel like all of us, and probably not all of us on this call, but in general in the funeral industry, is we're just so used to being told what to do and what society expects of us. And you girls know this more than anybody. It's about thinking outside the box and doing something a little bit differently. I mean, even Lauren, I was you know, reading your article on, I think it's Farewelling or one of them, where you were talking about, you know, working for the corporation and how you didn't even know about embalming. And for me, that's the exact same. When I first released my book back home in Ireland, and I was interviewed a lot on the radio and the TV, people were like, wait, what, you don't have to be embalmed? I'm like, no. Like, no. I mean, I personally don't want to be embalmed. Ew, that's just not my jam. But it's just, people don't realize that they can ask questions, and they don't realize the options that are available to them, and they pay money for things that they didn't have to pay for, and then they sacrifice. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. Sometimes I go around in circles.
No, I think that's good. And I think I didn't even think about like how to actually plan a kind of funeral like this, like Evites. Of course, I've heard of it, and I've seen it be used for like wedding receptions and that kind of thing.
Yeah, where the wedding background is really helpful.
Yeah, like, are there anything off the top of your head that you're like, oh yeah, this is a great platform for all online, you know, party platform planning places of?
No, there's no all for one that I would recommend, but interestingly, exactly as you said, Erin, like the wedding planning, logistically, that was I was a wedding planner. I was a general event planner for the happier variety, and then I came to the dark side. But I found myself sitting in my friends' funerals, which is probably not a good thing to say that I was thinking about this, but I just found myself going, this is interesting. Like, when I'm organizing a wedding, there's 2 people at the top of the church. Now there's a box at the top of the church with 1 person. You know, I just was going through it, going, what's the difference?
All of the parallels. Well, the biggest
Everything.
difference for me, I'm a wedding planner as well, is that funerals have a much shorter timeline, right? You're still doing all the same things. You're doing venue, you're doing flowers, you're doing food, you're doing speeches and ceremonies and candles. You're doing all of the same things, but you're doing it on a 1 week or sometimes a 2 month, timeline
Or 2 days.
instead of
I did that one time.
Yeah, instead
500
of
people
a
in 2 days.
12-month timeline. And I personally like that better because I don't need a year to plan somebody's wedding, right? It takes a lot of patience to keep meeting with a bride every month for a year.
100%. And actually what's interesting is when I have those longer lead time memorials, I do find that the families start to overthink things a lot. So they start to doubt their own decisions and stuff. So that's definitely something that you have to manage. 100%. But yeah, logistically they're very much the same. However, they are very different. Very, very different. The timeline is different. People act differently at it. And having all of that, that's what your families rely on expertise wise. They're just like, several of them have said to me, they're like, we were just going to hire our family event planner because that's the type of people I work for. They have family event planners. They have an event planner that's worked with them for everything. And afterwards they're all like, no, Jen, this was perfect. We're so glad, because there is a certain tone that has to be met. That is very different to a wedding. But yeah,
very different to a wedding. Yeah. So logistically the same and energetically very different.
Yes. So I have a question for you, and then we'll kind of go into our next little segue. You read the article. I answered what I want for my funeral. I've had it all planned out for a very long time. And honestly, this strange thing, or maybe it's not that strange, I wrote this when I was 19 and nothing has changed except for I've had 2 children, and like one song got the boot and one song got added, but everything else has stayed pretty much the same, even the margarita fountain. So
I love that. I love the margarita fountain. Yeah, I've had my funeral planned for the last 10 years. It was one of the first things. I didn't go into this thinking, oh, I'm doing a business change. I actually just was like, oh my God, the tragedy of it was if my friends could pass away at 23 and 28, I was like, Christ almighty, like I'm 26, this could happen to me. And so that realization was, it hit me on a million different levels. But being the planner that I am, I got out a piece of paper and I thought, right, what do I want to do? And then interestingly, for my book launch, which is 8 years ago now, it's tragic, time is flying. But anyway, for my book launch, I actually did a pseudo version of my funeral. So I served the drink I want served at my funeral, I served the food, I even did a Winnie the Pooh video that I wanted played at my funeral, and I played the music that I wanted. So it was, quite interesting to do that and live it, to be there, because I've often joked when I'm interviewed on the radio and TV and stuff that I want to be at my funeral. It's going to be such a cracker. So I can't give you all of the secrets. For sure, there's a cocktail that myself and my friend invented that is going to be at it, called the Lemon Downy. My last name is Muldowney, so the Lemon Downy will be served for all.
I love that.
And very interestingly, which I had to be very specific about this because it's not widely available, so the MFers better get a hold of it for my funeral, is the song It's Raining Men, but the RuPaul version, which most people don't know about. Get on YouTube, every single one of you, if you're interested at all, and check it out. It is.
I am going to, actually, for a specific reason. I have a couple getting married this summer, and it's 2 gentlemen. It's 2 gentlemen, and after they have after the ceremony's over, when they're doing their recessional back down the aisle, they're going to start with like classical music, and then they're going to interrupt it with the song "It's Raining Men" and have men come out and serve champagne to everyone.
Nice. Can I be in that one? Any chance of a +1?
So the RuPaul version would probably float their boat.
Oh, it is 20 times. To me, it's 20 times better than the Weather Girls and Jerry Halliwell. I mean, bless her cotton socks. She tried, but so yeah, it's very specific. And actually, when I was in Florida there recently, I asked the DJ to play it. It was at a drag show, and I thought for sure they've got a copy of this, and he didn't. I was like, how has no DJ got this? So you can only get it on YouTube. Now I actually have the CD though. That's how old I have the CD. But anyway, so that's got to be played at mine. But for sure, like back to what you were saying earlier, like, do I want people to be upset that I'm gone? Of course, like. They feckin' better, or I'll come back to all.
You want the full spectrum, you want them to laugh and cry and dance and all of it.
Exactly. Like, I want when It's Raining Men comes on, to be like, Jan, you crazy cat. Okay. Like, I hope you're up in heaven with all the men raining down on you or whatever, So yeah, it's got to be. It is about mourning a loss, but it's about, I want people to celebrate the time they had me as opposed to the time they won't, So.
Would anybody else like to chat with us and tell us your ideals around your own funerals?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think this is always my favorite part when we talk in the plan your own funeral, is telling mine, but I never get to hear anybody else's. So if anybody is brave, please share, or you could just share.
You haven't thought of it yet, you can wing it. What do you think right now, including final disposition choices?
Oh yeah.
Or at least one song. That's always a good place to start, right? One song. Anybody?
No, nobody wants to match
something.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So one thing that I joke about with my daughter, but I think it would be really hilarious, is the people who know me know that I have a very strange sense of humor, and I love dad jokes so much. So at my funeral, I want everybody who gets up to talk to say a dad joke, and it's just going to be absurd and full of groans, and
that's terrific.
It will entertain me highly from beyond the grave.
Really like that.
Before you begin, please tell us your joke, okay?
Talk about the roller coaster too. Everybody goes up. They have to start with the dad joke, and then they launch into the story about you and what you taught them and how much they love you. There's going to be laughter and crying at every turn. Yeah. Great. I really like that. Who else?
Do you know what I will say while we're waiting for people to participate? Come on, girls, I know you've got it. So what is interesting, I will say, is I'm such a fan of pre-planning, and one of the things I did at the very beginning as well was not only did I do my own, but I actually sat down with my mom. Now, I am so close with my mom. Like, she's my best friend. Like, she knows everything. I mean, everything, pretty
all
much.
The details.
All the details, yeah. And so I thought to myself, right, let me, God forbid anything happens to her, but like obviously it's going to one day, and as she would hope, she goes before I do. But sitting down with her, I just found that whole experience fascinating. We laughed, we cried, but it was so enlightening for me, for my business, and from our relationship point of view, because I know that when she dies, it's probably going to fall on me. I mean, even more so now, it's my profession. But I knew back then, it was me or my brother. Like, as one colleague said to me one time when both of us worked together, he was like, yeah, when the tonsils were going in your family, were you just like shoving him out of the way? You're like, me. So he's kind of the quiet, restrained type, but I knew it would fall to me. So I would organize her funeral from my point of view, from her daughter's point of view. I would not be doing it from my brother's point of view, because I'm not him, from my dad's point of view, from her grandkids' point of view, from her mother who's passed on's point of view. I wouldn't be doing it from anybody else's point of view except for my own. So when I sat down and did her pre-plan with her, and of course she was like, I mean, it's classic Irish, she was like, don't be talking about that, don't be silly, what would you be doing that for? I mean, it was a whole thing. But anyway, it was fascinating, the things that came out, like the flowers she hated, the flowers she wanted, the song she picked Maggie May. She hates when I always bring this up, Maggie May by Rod Stewart, and I was like, what? Why would you want that song? Your name's not even Maggie. Like, what's going on here? What madness is this? And she was like, oh, I love that song. And she was like, my best friends will all that's our song. And I was like, I never knew that. So like now her service is going to be encapsulate all of her, all of the facets of her. Like she's like a diamond, all of the facets, all of her different sides, as opposed to just my side,
Totally.
mine. And this is what I wanted to look like and what I read, you know, what I thought she was to the world. Now it'll be all of her facets. And I think that's what's so important about pre-planning. It doesn't have to be walking into a funeral home or any, you know, putting down money or anything. Yes, is that a wise thing to do? Sure, but it's really about getting your thoughts and emotions and who you are as a person, because you're just you, no one else. You know?
That is such a great, as a funeral director, I've never, and I don't know why I've never put it into that perspective before of like, this is how they view them and how they think that they would have wanted their funeral to be. And like you said, I think the hardest part for me as a funeral director was always like, how do I create something when they're almost like asking for something generic and they don't want to go further? And it's almost like, well, they never had these conversations. It's quite obvious. When they don't know if it's cremation or burial, you very much know that they've never talked about this as a family before. Yeah, when they're not even sure what songs to play and they say, well, what songs do they normally play? And then that's when I have my little like heart sigh inside of like, okay, well, let me ask. This is when I ask questions of like trying to at least get a personality or like, you know, what did they do for fun? You know, is there a favorite band that, you know, that they liked? And then they start talking with each other. But if it was one child, like I have 2 siblings, I know the funeral I would plan for my mom would be so different than the one that my brother would plan for my mom.
And so that is exactly it. It's crazy.
And even to sell, I don't want to say sell it, but to like present this to clients or your family is like, this is about you and bringing you to life as well as like a final goodbye gift to your family of like, how do we celebrate this person to the fullest? Well, through you, right? Like that's the easiest person to celebrate, like to know you the most is yourself.
Is you. Yeah, and you know what? Somebody actually shared a quote. Now, I don't know who wrote this. I wish I did, but somebody actually shared a quote with me that I thought was absolutely perfect. Now, I'm probably going to make a balls of it trying to reiterate it, but I'll give you the best version I can. It was, a million versions of you exist. A version of you exists in every single person you meet. And I just thought, oh, that's so true. The homeless person you walk by on the street, the person you buy your newspaper from, the person you were on a Zoom call, every single person you've any sort of interaction with has a version of you that lives in their mind. Mm-hmm. And how do you encapsulate that in your final goodbye to the world? It's just, yeah.
That's a good reminder too to somebody who's dying, who might think that they're alone in this world. Well, no, you've affected people that you don't even know you've affected, right?
So much so. I mean, I feel like I learned that with every single client is our impact extends well beyond our own understanding of it. And, you know, not that we should like go around and toot our own horns, but when we're feeling low, like that's something to really think about. You know, when we die, there will be a lot of people that will reflect with gratitude.
Yeah.
May I add an interesting idea kind of stemming from that?
Yeah.
I think I must have read it in a book, but it really captured me. Haven't forgotten that the idea that there are so many versions of us, it's also in our perspective. Like there's a version of me that only exists when I'm with my partner or when I'm with my daughter or certain friends. And that's why when those people die, that version of us also dies, and that grief is so much more profound because we lose a piece of ourselves really as well as them.
That's such a beautiful way of saying it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a good perspective for grief when we tell people like, you know, you never say I understand, because you don't. Like my grief feels different than your grief, and like my grief for my mom might feel different than the grief for your mom, and it's because of what you just said, like our relationships. And those relationships can be so unique where there's only one part of you shows up just for my children. And I know that's true. And that part of me only lives in them. So what a cool perspective to put it up, but what a profound and deep like remembering to have too.
It is, and you know, it's interesting as well because I remember even during my TED talk, and when I was invited to do that, and I was going to do something solely on sort of the funeral industry, and actually the guy that was sort of coaching me through it was like, no, you need to touch on something raw. You need to talk, and I actually, so my TED talk, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but ended up being on judgment and loss, because that's absolutely, like, you just hit the nail on the head. Is, you know, it doesn't matter who, like, I've had people go, oh well, he was just your cousin, like, why are you that bothered, why are you so upset, or why are you upset that you lost a job, or why are you upset about your miscarriage? I mean, that's huge at the moment, especially back home in Ireland. Or why are you upset about, it doesn't really matter. And it's one of the, like, I obviously talked about my own personal experience with judgment and loss, but it's so, who are you, who are any of us to judge anybody else's grief or loss? It is none of our business. It is that person, and that person's just themselves. It is up to them what they decide is important enough to grieve and stuff. And it's just, yeah, it is, and just,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I'd say we could talk about this for hours on it, to be honest.
To talk about grief.
I think it's a common feeling for people to feel judged for it. They feel judged for it, like we talked about the other day, if the person died by suicide or overdose or something else that was uncomfortable for people, you know, and I mean, on all kinds of situations. Like, I had some other examples and they just like totally left my brain. Like, oh.
Well, I was going to say, we focus on not what they died from. I mean, at anybody's funeral, you don't go around, I would think you don't go around saying, cancer, 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 you know, you talk about them and their life, but there's that taboo when we were talking about with suicide or overdose, that it's like, you don't even want to talk about them because this like thing lurks over it. And that goes back with that judgment, which with grief, and you have this extra judgment already. Now people are bearing, so here's the kind of segue back into what you do. Do you do services differently when you know that the person has died from an overdose or suicide, or has the family ever asked you to like completely ignore that fact?
Ooh, that's
it's a deep one. Yeah.
Yes, that is. Do I do services differently? No. It is one of the things I personally pride myself on, but I also know that I kind of call my families my clients, but also the funeral home. So it is a little bit difficult, but I know any funeral home that do bring me on board with them, they know that I actually, some people may think it was an insult, but I actually thought it was the best thing anybody's ever said about me. Is one of the funeral directors, when they were talking over drinks one night and it got back to me, he said, Jen would do anything for a family. It doesn't matter, you know, corporate sales, hitting profit margins, you know, getting the revenue in, anything like that. She doesn't care. It's what the family wants and what they need in that moment. And it could be the tackiest thing in the world that they want, but she will deliver it to them. And I don't think he meant it as an insult, but I think he was just sort of describing what I'm like. And that is true. It is literally what I'm like. I mean, I don't care if, you know, you think that handing out packets of seeds with let's grow together, let's grieve together, whatever it might be, is tacky. I don't really, and I'm Irish and I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on this, but I don't give a
you can curse.
Okay. I don't give a fuck. I don't, because if that's what the family want and if it represents the deceased, then that is all that matters, and that I will always hold to that. So in terms of doing it differently, no, every service is the same. And again, I made point to the fact that I do work for some high end and some, again, I don't care. I don't really care who you are. First of all, don't speak to me disrespectfully. Don't speak to any of my team disrespectfully. And I meet people where they're at. So there are times when sometimes I've had to organize services and I organize it through their assistant, and I only meet them sort of day of or 2 days before, and you know, you don't have a rapport to build. And to me, that's always, those are my least favorite, those are my saddest events, because I've no rapport and it's just, you become sort of just a minion that's doing some work for somebody. But when it is, suicide or somebody young, and unfortunately I have plenty of experience in both, I don't do it differently, but I definitely feel differently.
Yeah.
It definitely hits a different note. It's something that I've dealt with over the last 10 years. I am an empath, so I do absorb people's grief, unfortunately, and I've had to learn how to figure that out.
We should have a whole class on that, Erin.
Oh God, that is a whole other thing. Yeah,
It's
that's a
been
whole other
quite,
thing.
it's a journey to get there.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But in terms of the actual service, I don't do anything differently, but are they different? Yes, they 100% are. I thankfully haven't had any family say we want to ignore this topic completely. If I did have that, obviously you have to respect their wishes, but I will always I'm very honest, good or bad, I'm very honest with my families, and I will tell them if I feel like if I feel strongly that they're making a wrong decision. I will, thankfully, any suicide memorials I have done, we've actually very much embraced the topic, and actually created special rooms off the main memorial venue where we have gathered, whether it was students or friends of the deceased, to actually actively talk about it and to actively ask them if they have any dark thoughts to please, reach out. And it's been a great way for the family to heal as well, because they feel like the loss, sounds awful, but the loss can be of some use, or people can learn from it. But yeah, it's always a hard one. It's never one I don't think anybody could ever say they enjoy doing. But again, it comes back to like the testimony, I call them testimonies, but when you get a family that have gone through something like that and they still come back to you and take 5 seconds out of their day and out of their grief to thank you for, and it's been said, the magic I've created in getting it together, like that's just mind blowing to me, that that anybody could think of me during that time of despair. But yeah, they are energy.
They're grateful.
It takes me, I'd say, at least 2 days to recover from any of those type of memorials. It's just a different type of.
I was gonna say, as a funeral director, to meet them where they are in that spot is a place that nobody needs to ever go. You don't want to meet somebody in that area, and it's really hard because some of them, they have no idea that this was ever coming. We talked about a few days ago that a lot of the overdoses that are happening right now are absolutely 100% an accident. They weren't addicts in any way. It was a party or something. I mean, the last few months at the funeral home, there were so many young deaths, and it was just.
Yeah, I saw something today about like fentanyl in Atlanta. I mean, drugs are being cut more than ever before.
And so these families don't even know, the word funeral was never even in their mindset. And so they really are looking at you 100% of like, what's a funeral? What am I supposed to do?
What is this?
Yeah. Do you address that any differently? The like intake part, when somebody has died so suddenly like that?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is I actually had a conversation with the lady I'm working with today, and in her case, it was an elderly gentleman, and she was just a little rattled, and she just said, I know he's older, and so, I know you guys are used to doing this, and, she was just taking out her frustrations on me, and she said, I know you guys are used to doing this, and I know he was older, but it was still tragic, and it was still sudden, and we're just not ready. And I was like, what you're feeling is okay. It was sudden.
She's feeling, that's another example of her feeling judged for her grief, right?
100%. And I'm always like, it's okay, whatever you were feeling, and as anxious as you're feeling and chaotic. And she kept saying to me, I know you do this a million times, and I know they do it, and I know X, Y, and Z, and I just want to make sure everything's perfect for him, and I was like, of course you do, and I am so so glad, and this is something I say regularly because I firmly believe it. I am so, so, so glad that you have not been through this before. I am so glad that this is your first time dealing with death. I am genuinely so glad. And with the second I say that, they're like, oh, okay. It's just a weird flick of a switch where they're like, oh, yeah, that's actually a very good point. That it's, you know, it is okay that this is my first time in a funeral home and dealing with this. Because, you know, I guess they're used to being talked at as opposed to listened to. And that's massively where, you know, sometimes buttoning it. I know I talk a lot. That's why when I get on these calls, I talk so much, because a lot of the time I'm just
a lot of the time you're the listener.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, is most people haven't done this before. And I know that death doulas and home funeral guides and celebrants, it's hard to even start those conversations because people haven't done it before. So the first thing that they do is normally ask somebody else, like, you know, in their vicinity, what do I do? And so I think that's, I don't know what the point was that I was trying to say is that, but I think it's really important that what you're doing and the celebration of life and everything that comes after. I think people think of funerals, but they don't think about the death part so much.
Yeah.
But I think that they go together. Like Erin said at the beginning here, you're pretty much a death doula, but like to the family in a way, like a funeral doula, of like holding them through and like saying, I'm not going to leave you. Like, I'm going to get this done. I'm holding this space for you. And then you'll be on your own eventually here. Okay. Like,
yeah. And it does, it actually goes through to, I'm still in touch with nearly everybody I've ever worked with. Like they text me afterwards. They're like, I'm so sad I don't see you anymore. I'm like, I mean, that's a good thing, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it's hard because we open up intimate spaces with people, you know, and how do you close those?
Yeah, and you become that crutch, as I said, you know, good, bad, or ugly, you become that crutch that people sort of lean on and take out their frustrations, whether it's crying floods of tears or roaring, laughing, or getting angry with.
Now, I think this is a good question to kind of end the night with, because we talk about self-care as a doula and a celebrant. When you are so entrenched in people's families and have such a good, tight relationship, do you have any boundaries that you set with yourself, like 100%? Or are you kind of fluid with your boundaries? And if so, do you notice any side effects from that?
That is a tough one. I'm not great with boundaries, I'm not going to lie. So I did have, actually recently at the start of this year, I did have one or two clients that I worked with that really didn't respect time boundaries, you know, and I always make myself very available. I'm like, I tell them I'm available 24/7, and that's sort of part of the comfort blanket that I give. But I really, it was rare that anybody took me up on that offer. Whereas I did have this, I did realize that I need to not do that, but it's innate in me. If an email or text comes in, I just have to respond to it, because again, a bit like talking to that lady today on the phone, I understand that they're anxious. This is a one-time gig for them. This is not their daily job, and so you have to respect that that's where they're coming from. I have started trying to take time off, which I never used to, and I have just started to take care of myself. So while I'm not great at the boundaries, I'm still working on that. I have started to hire people that if I need to take the time off, I can, and I still give that availability to my clients in my funeral homes. And then when I do feel that tiredness, or that I do feel like I'm just zapped out, that I actually do take the time as opposed to keep pushing through. And if I can take that, but I mean, when you're working with live families and you've got services the next day, you can't necessarily, but sometimes you just have to go with the flow. So haven't quite figured out the whole, you know, work-life balance, but I get there, it's fine.
I think
it's hard.
Anybody here would agree with that, or any death worker.
Yeah.
Like, you have boundaries in your head, but it's very hard to keep some of those, because like you said, you're working with families who are very anxious. They don't know what's going on. And so you can't be mad when they're like, hey, but what about this? What might seem like a mundane question that they should know the answer to, they don't. And so you do, you're the expert. So you have to be available for that, but you also have to have like sanity.
I think both birth and death are so powerful and, you know, so transformational and so magical that when we're in those experiences, it makes kind of everything else fall away a little bit. You know, I know that every time I'm like really involved, you know, there are a few days where that's my world, where really that's all I'm focused on and not a lot else can get in. But the boundary for me is that like, okay, now it's over. Now I have to return to my children. I have to, you know, cleanse myself and be ready to help more people. If it's a hard space because it seems I mean it's not just that it makes it feel like nothing else is as important. It's true, like nothing else is as important as these sacred things, so it's very natural to elevate them. And you know.
Totally. And I think actually, I mean, one of the things I've learned since COVID sort of ceased, it hasn't ceased to exist, but since it slowed down and since we've started reopening, is, you know, I know this year is going to be one of my busiest years yet, for sure, because anybody who lost somebody in 2020 are already wanting to do on their anniversary, do memorials. And it's like, for example, for me, I know that as long as I create that relationship with a family and I bring somebody along that when I need to take, so say if I was going home to Ireland next week for 3 weeks to spend with my family, whatever, as long as I bring somebody along and bring them on the journey to hand over, a family is fine. They've no problem with it. It's when it's just, and I've seen it in funeral homes where it's just like, oh, well, it's my day off. So suddenly you just get no answer to an email or they're just disappeared. And then all of a sudden they're back and they're back on the bandwagon again. You're like, wait, what's happening? And that's when a family panics because this is their person. They've lost their person. Their person is dead. And so they want answers. They want everything to be perfect. So it really is just about handing it over and having, I mean, even I'd say you guys, like with your partnership that you have, like if one person calls Death Wives, they don't get Lauren, they get Erin, and, you know, vice versa. So as long as there's somebody giving answers, it should all, you know, run smoothly.
I think that's a really valid kind of ending too. We had a meeting this morning with a collective of death doulas in Denver, and they kind of said the same thing. It's like, if we want to see this really impact our communities and impact families, it can't just be one person trying to do it. You have to have a collective. You have to have a group of people. Like, it can't ever be a competitive space or anything like that. It has to be like,
so much death to go around, so it doesn't need to be a competitive space.
Yeah, we have more than enough death, not enough information of like what kind of deaths you can have and what kind of services you can have.
Completely agree.
So like, the more the merrier. If you're in a place that you don't know anybody right now who is a celebrant or who is a death doula, that could be your homework assignment to yourself, is like, let me find at least, I know Bree knows a few. She's doing a wonderful job of that where she is up in Washington. But yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that's why even just like Zoom has been amazing, because it's building these collective communities. Even if we're not in the same town, we at least might go, you know, oh, I thought of this person and they might be available to do this. And because we do have this platform, it's opening a lot of doors for people who maybe didn't have the opportunities before. So,
and this is David speaking. Lauren and Erin were great supports for me. I'm a customer, not a participant, but I'm looking forward to maybe being a participant. And I think that's a source that you guys should look at, is people that have been transcendently moved by their experience of the service you provide and go, yeah, I'd like to do that for my family members or my friends that are going to have those. So there's a great resource out there, and you already know that, but I'm just encouraging you to follow through on it.
Thanks so much, David. That's definitely at the heart of the work, really. Like the very first ethos we even had is that this is community work and it's family work. And, you know, really what we want, if we're going to boil it all down, is to teach people how to take care of their own dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can do it.
That's very much the Irish way of doing things.
Yeah. So. And another conversation, I would love to talk to you more about wakes and your experience with a more traditional kind of wake, and, you know, as opposed to a chapel or church funeral.
Well, save that one for, I'll be home. Please God, I'll be home in the end of August. So I'll do a live from.
Oh, that would be so
Very
cool.
cool.
I'll hang off the cliffs of Moher and give you a
Yes.
Cool.
Do a live traditional wake.
Yeah, maybe I'll even get one.
I was gonna say, have somebody die while you're there. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, or do a digital one. It can be a community Irish wake. Have people sign up and give you their people's names, and it can be a big community online.
Well, interestingly, and I know we're trying to sign off, but actually interestingly, so I actually still do memorials for back home and for people. So in that respect, like I'm just a kind of consultant, but like this, we do Zoom and we go through the entire process. And it's not like this particular lady I was speaking with today, hers isn't until February, so that'll be a bit too late for you guys to hang on till. But yeah, it's just, you know, you just never know. Maybe I will get one in August, September, and it'll just work out perfectly.
We got to get creative on that, you know, community mass funeral thing, because there just have been so many people that have died, and I'm sure a lot of people will go ahead and have services, but also a lot of people won't. And so what can we offer that, you know, maybe in a way is a little bit more generic because it's not an individual 2 or 3 hours that are honoring one specific person, but where we can take all the names in and read all of the names and like honor people on a larger scale. I think there's really a space for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, for joining us. And
Thanks for having me.
If you're interested, her book is called Say Farewell Your Way, a funeral planning guide for Ireland.
But it's hard to get a copy of. I wanted to buy a copy and it was like $900. So go you.
What?
No, you can find it. I found one for $14.95. You just gotta.
Yeah, I was about to say it should be on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think. I mean, it's 8 years old now. Actually, if you go onto my website, I have updated. I've a version of the book, but it's actually for Irish diaspora. So for anybody based in sort of Australia, America, but have Irish descent, who want to input, because my first book, as incredible as it was, and gave me a great platform, it was a funeral planning guide for Ireland. So it was very niche market. It was like teeny tiny. And so, yeah, my second one is a funeral planning guide for people, Irish people abroad, or for people with Irish heritage abroad. And my third one is going to be interesting. So that's coming soon. That will be about how our death motivates us in life. So
I love that. Anything else you want to talk about? Your blog, your...
You can tune into that. I think David wants to say something. He looks like...
Yeah.
Good night. He's gone. I was like, what's he too? So the podcast is coming out soon, where I interview you lovely ladies as well. As it was supposed to launch at Christmas, but it's been a whole slow. But so yeah, if anybody wants to tune into that, I talk about definitely some fun and interesting things on that. So just keep an eye on, add me on Instagram. Jennifer Muldowney is my Instagram handle. The Glam Reaper is my Twitter, and Muldowney Memorials is the kind of official business account. But I think my Jennifer Muldowney one's probably more fun. Just reach out if you have any questions, and if I can help anybody, as you were saying, like it is a collective, it is a community. So if I can help anybody progress in their own way, let me know.
Awesome.
Anybody have any questions or anything else before we say good night tonight?
Right.
Well, next month we have oh my gosh, I just had her name up here, and then Amy. She will be our guest, and she's an artist who does memorial art. So she created a whole reconstruction in a way of her aunt's funeral, and she was of course not even born when her aunt died. Her aunt was only 11 years old, and so she recreated the memorial itself to kind of give healing again. But then she also studies like actual roadside memorials and how important they are to have in our community. So art and memorials and grieving and how they kind of all work together. So that'll be next third Thursday of the month.
And then we just locked in what the one after that will be. We were waiting to announce it, waiting for confirmation, but we're gonna do something really cool. We're going to go out to Half Moon Farms here in Lakewood, Colorado, which is a place that's receiving the tea tree or the fertilizer, if you will, from water cremation here locally. So we're literally feeding the flowers with human remains, and so it's an amazing thing. So we're going to have a garden party there, and we're going to have the Colorado End of Life Doula Collective come out, a bunch of women, and we're just going to have a little gala that we're going to televise and interview really like all of the local death workers in the alternative death industry in Denver, which will be fun.
And why it's so important to have a collective community of us. So it'll be really, really fun. Anyways, it was so nice spending an evening with you all. And again, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Hey, good night, beautiful faces.
Good night, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Hi.
Okay, let's see.
Yes.
Stop recording.
Oh.